four friends return from an outing to find a chilling and horrifying sight at the home of one of them. They are shocked beyond words and search for answers to this dastardly act. Who is behind this evil and why did he do this? This is the story of a 15-year-old boy with a heart of steel and his trail of evil. The quad of Ryan Fingles, Taylor Tewksbury, Alexander Smith, and Nicholas Browning, also known as Nick, had spent some time at a mall on the 2nd of February 2008 before they all left for Nick's house. They all had plans for a sleepover at his place that night. Upon arriving, they find out that the door is unlocked and quickly suspect that some burglary activities must have taken place. However, they discover one of the most shocking scenes when they enter the house. All the members of Nick's family lost their lives. Some evil person had eliminated the entire family apart from Nick, who was lucky enough to be out at the time of the incident. Shortly afterward, the police arrive, and the boys are taken to the police station to give their statement on what they just witnessed. The detectives here take turns to interrogate the boys, beginning with Ryan. In the course of speaking, they ask some elementary questions to ease the distressed boys while building rapport with them. While one of them speaks with Ryan, the other speaks with Nick. With Ryan, he tells a story of their time together at his residence. It turns out all four boys had spent the night in his house, and Nick's house was the next place for their next sleepover. He speaks about the games they played and other fun activities they all engaged in while in his house. However, he tells the detective that Nick left them later that night to get his car, so they could go for a drive. He never returned with the car. When Alex called him to inquire about the car, Nick said he fell asleep in the car and later returns to Ryan's apartment. All of this looks like a great story, except for the statement that Nick fell asleep in the car that he was sneakily trying to get out of the house. This is because the sheer level of excitement, considering his age of 15 and the illegality of driving at that age, should prevent all forms of sleep. Taylor, in his own interrogation room, is met by a detective who questions him about the previous night.
I'm a homicide detective. Some bad stuff has happened tonight. I need you to be 100% honest with me.
And he recounts all that he remembers.
I want you to tell me what's been going on and explain. Who were you with all day?
I was with Ryan, Alex, and Nick. We were at Ryan's house in the morning because we slept over there last night.
What time did you guys get over there last night?
I went over there right after school.
You got there after school about what time?
Well, I went home first, and then my mom drove me over there around like 2:50 maybe.
2:15 or
2:50?
2:50.
Yeah.
He remembers them playing a game and watching a movie.
Okay, what did you guys do there last night?
Mostly, we were playing crossed out front, and then we played video games, basically. Watched a movie.
What movie did you watch?
We were watching, what was it called? I remember we're watching Robin Big at first, and then we were looking through the movies. Oh, Accepted. We were watching Accepted.
Okay.
We started that around like 10:15 or something.
Okay, around 10:15 last night?
Yeah.
However, he falls asleep and wakes up later to find the rest of the boys sleeping.
I fell asleep like halfway through it.
So,
And then
where were you guys in? What part of the house were you guys in?
in like the living room, the main room, family room, I guess you want to call it.
Where's parents home?
Yes.
The detective asks if Nick was around, and he says yes.
Was Nick there?
Yes.
After a subtle threat from the detective, he recants and says Nick was not around and the time was about 1:30 a.m.
Nick was not in there?
No.
Do you know that he left?
What?
Do you know that he left?
I mean, yeah, I guess because I didn't see him there. I didn't know he was leaving.
Okay.
He also remembers Nick saying that he was going to get his car from the house.
He said he might go and take the car, but he ended up...
Take his parents' car?
It was his car.
However, this is not information that he feels very comfortable divulging. Nick, on the other hand, tells an almost exact story about the sleep. his trip back to the house to get the car, and falling asleep in the car while waiting for his folks to fall asleep so he could get the keys.
And so I went in the car and started yelling, they'll go to bed in a half hour and the lights will be off. So I was sitting there and I fall asleep.
Now, when Alex is questioned, he initially denies Nick ever left Ryan's house.
So you and Nick slept in the living room?
Yes.
You're 100% sure? You need to be perfectly honest with me. That Nick was in there with you?
Yes.
The whole night?
Yes.
However, when the detective reveals that 2 of his friends already said that he did, Alex quickly changes his story and agrees that he left the house to get his car.
Okay, I'm having 2 people tell me he left the house. This is a murder investigation. 4 people have been murdered tonight. You don't want to start lying to me right now. I will drag you down with this if you start lying with me. You need to tell me 100% truth. I already know he's left the house. I already know why he left the house.
Yes, he left.
Alex's lies may have been a part of a prior agreement among the 4 friends to conceal the location of their friend at the time of the night. However, there is no proof of this, and the young boy might just be trying to help his friend stay out of trouble. When the detective finds out what happened during the night, they begin to ask questions about the events leading up to the dreadful afternoon discovery. All the boys said that they had some food before one of the fathers drove them to Nick's house for the planned sleepover there. However, they all recall that Nick appeared worried over not being able to reach his parents by phone.
He was worried, he kept on calling, all the phones, leaving messages.
Upon getting to the house, they met the horrifying state of all of Nick's family. And Mr. Smith, the father of one of them, calls the cops. Nick adds that he went to check on his mom and siblings and found them lifeless as well.
And I went upstairs, looked for the rest of my mother and my 2 brothers. I saw them.
He also said he found the Xbox in the house lying outside.
He saw the Xbox and the Wii, on top of each other on the pool table.
This paints the picture of burglary, but it doesn't appear to be true, as most burglars would take the Xbox and not mete out such a cruel act on their victims. As the detective rounds off this section of questions, Nick is actually found smiling at the detective's lighthearted jokes. What kind of a son laughs in such a difficult moment? Another inconsistency appears in the accounts of the boys. While Nick had made all of his friends believe that he never got the keys to his car, Taylor says he saw Nick had dipped his hand into one of his pockets and produced the keys. He would later say that he wasn't aware the keys were with him all along.
But then today at the mall, he said he couldn't get the keys and he pulls the car keys out of his jacket. And he said he said they were just in there, he didn't even know.
In his pocket?
Yeah, in his jacket pocket.
Okay.
The detective asks some more questions about Nick's life at home, and Taylor admits that he had gotten into trouble with his folks a couple of times over his drinking habit.
Did he say anything to you about anything? Has he had any issues with his parents lately?
Not that I know. I think he got in trouble once or twice because of drinking.
Again, one of the boys reveals that Nick had called one of his brothers to leave the door to the garage open.
I remember Nick told his little brothers how he was going to get in to keep the basement door unlocked. That's how he was going to get in the
Did he call his little brother?
Yeah, he called.
And that's how he's going to get in the house?
Yes.
The basement door?
Yeah, the slider.
Where the pool table is, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
that.
Okay. All right, that's real important.
I should remember that.
That's cool. Thank you.
This is something that Nick denied ever doing until the detective reminded him that one of his friends already told him about the call home. He eventually admits to this.
Brian or someone told me that you called home and talked to Greg at one point last night?
9, 10.
Okay. What'd you tell him?
Told him, don't leave the back door unlocked.
Why'd you tell him to do that?
I was going to go into the house and grab the keys.
Okay. I'm not trying to hit on you for driving a car. It's just...
The detectives leave Alex and Taylor for a while before returning to them. He asks if the boys remember anything they might have left out, and Alex says he remembers Nick complaining about his mother's alcoholic problem, as well as his annoying brothers.
Anything else you think you need to tell me?
I don't know. He always says his brothers are annoying and stuff, and he says his mom drinks a lot.
Does she?
It is also obvious that his father was quite hard on him. So much so that Nick had called him Adolf Hitler.
Okay, how about the father?
I don't know. He just says he's really hard on him.
Okay.
And I guess he calls him Hitler. I don't.
Calls him Hitler?
Yes. Because he's really hard on him.
Okay.
Afterward, all 3 of Nick's friends are allowed to leave, and the detective turns to Nick. He comes in with another detective. They begin by telling him that they have evidence that suggests that he had not been telling the truth. Furthermore, they tell him that they believe that he had something to do with the terrible incident in the house. They also tell him that they found the key to the holder of firearms that his father owned. While none of these seem to be true, the detectives are really hoping that he admits to his crime and gives them a confession.
I think that you killed your family. And the thing is, the more you lie, the deeper it gets.
When confronted with taking the lives of his entire family, Nick is initially silent. However, he begins to refute the detective's accusations with what can best be interpreted as whispers instead of vehement refusals, as one will expect from an innocent person. They continue to pressure him to accept that he did it by presenting different scenarios, pointing out that his friends gave them vital pieces of information. They also show him his family portrait to appeal to his emotions.
This is your family. We need to know what happened here. Look at this. There are happier times.
But nothing seems to get through to him, as he maintains that he is innocent. They even present a possible motive: the prospect of obtaining the insurance money that he would receive if his parents were no longer alive. However, Nick insists that he is innocent. After exhausting all of these methods, they tell him that he is under arrest and handcuff him to the table there before leaving him alone for a while.
Okay, well, you know what? You're under arrest.
Okay. 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Sit down.
Sit down. Okay.
While it is expected that he will grow anxious, he doesn't appear to be, but falls asleep instead. The detective returns after about 40 minutes to pick up from where they left, and Nick wakes up from his brief slumber. The detective releases him from the cuff and the questions begin again. The question of the key found by his bedside comes up again. However, Nick is smart enough to know that this is not enough evidence to put him in prison. After some more prodding, the detective calls him a cold-blooded person and that he must be responsible for what happened to his family. He asks why the detective believes this, and the detective tells him that he has not expressed any form of emotion. This is inexcusable following what just happened, but Nick doesn't believe that his lack of emotions should be reason enough to have him thrown into prison. After some more confrontational questions, the detective switches to a tone of something that is more inquisitive. It almost appears as if he is not condemning or accusing Nick. He just wants to know the motive behind the act.
I can't fathom why this happened, but I'm sure there's a reason. Because I can't imagine in my world that someone would kill their mother, father, and their 2 little brothers. But maybe there is a reason.
Nick is again not forthcoming with the truth, but as the detective insists and continues to demand for a motive, Nick says he might be getting to the point where he probably had a motive for what he did. The next minutes reveal the mindless acts of evil that Nick carried out. He begins his confession by telling the cop about his involvement with the Boy Scouts. He also tells him about a camp meeting they were to attend as Boy Scouts. However, he wasn't interested in this camp, and his father insisted that he attends.
So there's this, I'm almost Eagle, I'm almost done.
Yes,
Getting
life.
Right, Life Scout. And then there's this leadership weekend, camp out, whatever thing, and, you know,
Where was it?
this was Brownsea, somewhere up in Africa, but anyways, I didn't want to go, you know, I'm almost done, didn't need a leadership camp, so my attitude wasn't great on the trip.
You got pissed?
So he got pissed, and as we're coming home, he hits me,
While at camp, he was not on his best behavior. When his father found out about this, he became upset about it, prompting him to abuse Nick physically and mentally. This harsh treatment from his father grew over time, and his father never seemed to get enough of his disparaging remarks about his son.
Was he beating on you too, mentally, or?
It was mentally, and it was like, he got me at times, and that was the.
You're at life scale, you're at life scale, for God's sakes.
And so that was sort of the beginning, the beginning of it, and it's just.
How long ago was that?
That was this fall, last fall, and then
Kept it up there.
On the night of the incident, he had come home to the house that night, as reported by his friends. Here he finds his father sleeping in the living room. He also discovers that one of his father's firearms is lying out.
I saw him sitting on the couch, the TV was on, and I knew the gun was out on the workshop bench.
With this in place, he takes the life of his father by shooting him after some contemplation.
He was sleeping.
Yeah, standing over him. And then I went between putting the gun up to his head and pulling it back down and up.
Do you have a pillow up too, or?
Yeah, just the gun. The gun was. I'm not sure if I meant to pull the trigger or if it
Just went off.
It just.
Driven by a mix of lots of emotion, like fear, confusion, or possible paranoia, he proceeds to meet his sleeping mother and brothers to end their lives too, like his father.
I realized I couldn't just walk away from that. And then I shot my mom. And then
She's still sleeping.
yeah, I waited for a little bit, then I think she went back to sleep. I shot her.
Why the brothers, man?
I thought no one was there to say anything that my story would go because I was the only one. Just got scared.
While his confession is ongoing, the detective leans in and pays rapt attention to him as he speaks. For the first time since the case began, Nick expresses some real emotions and he sniffles and cries. After this, he tells them the location of the firearm which he had thrown out.
I need to know where the gun is, though. We can't have that out there.
It's on Sherwood Road. I'll explain it on the map or whatever.
You may have to take us there.
Sure, it's fine.
The detective now has what he is looking for. However, he still needs to tie up some ends and asks Nick to provide some exact information about the actual evil act.
Do you remember where you shot your dad? I wasn't in there. On his body?
On the head.
The head?
Yep.
How about your mom?
The head.
Your brothers too, then?
The
Nick does give him a pretty grim account of how he methodically carried out the act on his entire family. He tells him about moving the Xbox and other things to make it look like a burglary.
What happened with the jewelry and the Xbox?
I opened up the jewelry case, threw some on the ground, and moved the Xbox and the Wii to the pool table.
The detective appears calm. He gets some of his colleagues to look for the firearm and tells Nick about his grandfather who will be coming around. With a confession in place, the detective brings Nick the clothing he will be getting used to for a long time: a prisoner's jumpsuit. Strangely, after his trial, his grandparents began to write to the court pleading for leniency. Probably this is just to preserve what is left of the family of their children that their son so mercilessly decimated. In January 2009, Nick admits to his crimes and takes a plea bargain. He was sentenced to 4 life sentences with the possibility of parole sometime in 2031. However, even this isn't certain, as the laws of Maryland are quite stiff concerning parole. The question in the hearts of everyone is if Nick did what he did at the spur of the moment, or if it was a premeditated act. If you enjoyed this episode and like to see more stories on true crime, then be sure to subscribe to our channel. This way, you will be notified every single time we upload new videos. Thank you for watching.